Welcome back to another episode of RecNation. In this episode, work continues on the track sled here. We're going to work on the driveline finally, see if we can get that all hooked up, and that she's ready for a test drive. All right, to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get the old gearbox out of the way. This chain inside the gearbox requires chain lube. The newer style 420 chain doesn't require chain lube. You just got to keep it clean and dry, and it works well. So we're going to try to get this cut off of here. We'll clean the front up a little bit, get some of this extra steel off. And then I have a 47 tooth sprocket that'll go on down here. We'll get started working on that, getting the grinder out, getting this stuff all removed, get the puller, get these gears off, and we'll go from there. So I think I have this ground enough that it'll come off. I'm trying to save this back part right here. Once this gear is on for the drive line, I'm going to try to reuse this to kind of help protect that gear from rocks or snow, whatever it is. So getting these gears off. This is a gear puller. The way it works is it's got 3 teeth. You set it in the middle like that, and you hook the arms on. And as you tighten it, it'll pull the gear off, hopefully. So the problem I'm having here is the center section of this point right here. It's too big to fit in the gear, so we're going to put a little spacer behind there with that bolt, or that nut, sorry. There you can see what it looks like. Now that we've got the top one off, we'll work on getting the bottom one off as well. All right. Definitely makes it a lot easier job. Okay, as you can see, it didn't come off nicely like I wanted it to, so I ended up having to cut it off. The problem was there was a weld right here in the middle that I couldn't get to, so I cut it as much as I could, bent it back and forth till it broke. It did take a little chunk of metal out of here, but we'll fill that back in again. I have this here will fit over the drive shaft, and then this gear bolts onto that. But as you can see, this is going to hit down here, so I got to cut the running board off. I was going to take them off anyways, so we'll do that right now. One running board's off, and then we'll keep working on the drivetrain here. So the next thing we got to do is we're going to attach this to the drive shaft. Is I've drilled a hole straight through, tap the other side. So we're going to put this over the drive shaft, and we're going to drill a hole down so we can get our set screw in there. Okay, so the hole's drilled. We can get our set screw in here now. Tighten up the lock screw, and we'll get our hardware, and we'll get the gear mounted on the front, just like so. All right, the gear is on and it's solid. So now if I move the track sled, hang on. If I roll it forward or backwards, the gear rolls with it. So we're all set. All right, so the first step in the drive line, I have a 1-inch channel here. We're going to cut these off, 2 pieces at 7 inches. And then I got 2 3/4 inch bearing blocks. What we'll do is we'll take and weld 2 bolts on top, So you can set the bearing block like this, and you'll have some adjustment in the bearing block on the bolt to tighten and loosen the chain. We'll get started on that. So we got our 2 pieces of channel cut. We're just going to mark on there where we want the holes, and then we're going to drill 2 holes on the drill press. Okay, so real quick, we want to go over a couple things about bolts. There's 3 main hardnesses of bolt out there. Number 2, this is kind of used for a shear pin if you want it to break off versus breaking something further down the line. A good example of this is like on a hay baler. Usually there's a shear pin that goes in. If something goes wrong on the baler, it'll break the bolt off versus breaking more expensive parts inside the baler. Number 5 is probably the most common, and this is kind of in the middle of the road hardness of a bolt. And then there's grade 8. That's a hardened bolt. You can see by how it's stamped on the head. And typically they have like this I don't know, copper color to them. And all the hardware in the driveline on the track sled, we're going to use grade 8 bolts, so they're hard and we know they won't shear off on us. So we have our holes drilled. What we're going to do is take 2 bolts. We'll set them from the back side. And what we'll do is we'll tack these into place. And then once they're tacked in, as you can see here, you won't need to hold that bolt as you tighten it, and then the bearing block will fit on top, and then you got room to kind of slide the bearing block back and forth for adjustment. All right, so we'll get this one tacked up and we can get these welded into place. Okay, so we have our 2 bearing blocks made. And we're all set. For the jack shaft, I got a 3/4 inch solid steer shaft. And we have, what we're gonna do is slide these over the top of the shaft. This one's already done. I drilled a hole straight through the middle here. And what we can do is just put a bolt through, tighten that in like that. And we'll drill a hole right through the shaft, and that'll hold that on there so it can't spin. And then this here will be welded to the gear itself. So on the brake rotor and the main drive gear, the way it's going to work is we have these. The gear will bolt right to this, the rotor will bolt to this. We did the same thing here, drilled the hole straight through, threaded the other side so we can put a cap screw through there that'll hold it from spinning on the shaft. And I also left the hole on the side here so we can put the lock screw in there and lock it tight to the shaft as well. All right, so we have our holes drilled through our blocks here. Next step is we're going to tap the threads in. If you get a drill and tap set, you can kind of see I got one here. The way it works is this is actually a tap right here. You can see it's got teeth on it, and as you screw that through, it kind of cuts the threads in. You want to make sure you use the right tap for your threads. So our lock screws are actually a 5/16 18 thread, and there's a 5/16 24. If you compare them side by side, you can see one's kind of a closer, let me get a little closer here. If you compare them side by side, you can see one is more of a fine thread than the other one. So you want to make sure you're using the correct thread for the bolt you're going to use. Then all you really got to do is there's a handle. This fits inside the handle like so, and tighten that into the handle. You stick this in the threads into the hole and you start cutting the threads. This top one should go through pretty easy. I'm threading this from the top down. When it gets to the bottom there, now it's going to start cutting new threads. And what you want to do is just kind of, I got to tighten it up a little bit. There we go. When you feel it cutting, you want to kind of start going. You you'll feel it grab, you want to go slow, and it takes a little bit of patience because it's cutting new threads. When it starts to bite too much, you back it off, and it'll clear out the metal that you're cutting through. And you just kind of keep working it through. Back it out again. As it cuts its way down through that metal, if you twist too hard, this is what happens. It'll just smash that right off. I've already wrecked one of them, so we'll keep going. Like I said, it takes a little patience. Just kind of keep working it back and forth. There, we're cutting. Like I said, you can kind of get the feel for when it starts to grab too hard. You can tell it's kind of going to be too much. You just twist it back a little bit. It cleans out the new threads that you're making, unless you keep working your way down through the piece. This is actually going through pretty well. Let me back it up a little bit. Yep, and we're starting to come out the bottom. There, we are through. Run it down through, and we'll run it back out again. Then we can put our cap screw in there. Go ahead and put it in, and it turns through the threads you just created. Just like that. Now it's threaded, and we're all set. So the next step, we got to cut the axle off. It'll be about 8 inches. Mount the sprocket on the inside. The shaft to run through. We've got our brake rotor on here, and then the other shaft will fit on the outside like so. And then the chain will run ahead down to there. So to get this hooked up, I made a jack shaft here. We're gonna run a chain ahead from there. One of the things I had done, I cut a chain piece here. Originally I was gonna try to have it straight up and down, but after seeing how that worked, I decided that it'd be better off having the jack shaft back a little bit from the drive sprocket. So I added in 2 pieces of channel. I'll bring you guys in so you can see what that looks like here. All right, so you can see kind of how the jack shaft's mocked up there. This here and this here, those are the 2 pieces of channel iron that I put in there, which allowed me to kind of have a better adjustability on where these bearing blocks will go. You can see here's the chain that runs down. It's not lined up right yet, but so that's what we did there to kind of give this more of an angle on the chain. To give this kind of more of an angle on the chain going back versus going straight up and down. Then we got 2 bearing blocks here. It's going to kind of help keep that jack shaft straight so it doesn't want to twist. We're not putting a lot of horsepower through it. I could probably have got away with 1, but I think that 2 will work better. And then on the end here we got our brake rotor, and this is the drive sprocket here that runs ahead to that gear right there. So next thing I have to do, now that I changed the angle here, this chain is too short, so I'll have to cut a new chain for the length of this one right here, and I'll show what that looks like. So this here is what they call a master link in a chain. There's a clip on the outside that you pry out, then this cover comes off, and then you can push that from the back side, then both sides of the chain will come apart. We're going to take that out real quick. Alright, the best way I find to do it, it's kind of a pain, but if you take a needle nose, you want to line up this end with the back side of that pin, then you put it on the front and you kind of push on it. There we go. And now I can pull that off. You see that front piece comes off, and then you can push this out the back side, and now the chain's in 2 different pieces. Alright. So now I have a mark on the link that I want to remove from this chain. Right here. This device is called a chain breaker. And the way it works is you fit it over the pin you want to take out. If you look at a chain, there's wide links and narrow links. You see this one's a wide link, that's a narrow link. The master link itself is going to be a wide link. So when you're taking out the pin, you want to make sure you take it out so that the narrow link is sticking out. I'll show you what that looks like closer. Alright, so then you can see this one's the wide link, narrow link. So we'd take this pin out right here, and that would leave us with a narrow link on top that we can hook our master link back into. And so find my mark. So the way the chain breaker works is you set it over the top, then you tighten this bolt down over the pin you want out. Make sure it's somewhat centered like this, and then you turn this lever, tighten it in, and what it'll do is it'll actually push that pin out. Make sure it's lined up. It'll push that pin out the bottom of the chain. There she goes. And if you keep going, that pin should fall right out. There she is. There's the pin in my hand. Now I can back this back out again. And then loosen up the clamp. And now I can pull the chain apart. It's in two pieces. This is the part that I need. I got two narrow ends. If you look at it from the end, I got two narrow ends that I'll put the master link into, and it'll form the chain that I need to connect those two. Then a master link kind of works in reverse. Push the end through both sides. Put the cover back on. Then you want to go ahead and slide that clip back in again. Again, there's actually a tool for this that I don't have. Again, then I just use the needle nose to push it back on again. Until it locks into place. Now we have the chain that we need. There's that master link put back in again. Alright, got the chain out. I'll bring you in close so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so now that chain is on. It's the link that we need. There's that master link we just put in, and that's going to give me the location of where I got to mount this channel iron here. I will have some adjustment in the bearing block to go back and forth, but then now I know where I can weld these into place and then bolt them down, and we'll get started on the chain that runs ahead from here. So we have everything mounted for the jack shaft and the chain running ahead to the drive sprocket. Next step is we're going to get right in here, we're going to get the brake caliper mounted. For the brake system on there, what I have actually, this is a kit that came off of Amazon for a pit bike. It came with a brake lever, master cylinder, and of course the caliper here. I was going to mount this back here out of the way. The problem I ran into is that the bleeder is here. The bleeder has to go up, so I'm going to have to mount this on the front side of the brake up here. The other problem I'm running into is the bracket they have designed here is designed to mount onto a set of forks. In this case, the way it fits on there, that brake mount actually hits on the back side of the brake disc here. So what we'll end up having to do is actually probably cut this off a little bit so it's flat. And then I got a small piece of 3/4 inch channel that I'll use to mount on there and run it down to the mount here, and that'll hold the brake caliper in place. So we'll get started on that. Okay, we got one brake strut done here. You can see I used a 3/4 inch square bar, weld it to the mount. We got the channel here that runs across. We got another strut on this side. I put a bolt in here so that we can unbolt this if we needed. And this is actually far enough back that I can still get a socket on this bolt down here that holds the bearing block. So we'll start working on this side, getting that brake strut in there, and then we'll be good to weld this piece right here, this channel iron that holds the brake caliper to this channel. Okay, the brake caliper is mounted. It's at kind of a weird angle because if you look under here, the way this curves out, we'll try to get a look. You can see right under there where the mount is, that's got to clear the curvature. Right there, you can see it just going by of the way the disc is made here. All right, so now we're going to mount the brake lever. This actually came from, like I said, a pit bike. And with a pit bike, the brake lever is designed to mount on the throttle side. We don't want it on the throttle side, we want it over here. And if we mounted it on this side, then it just wouldn't work right. So what I have to go on there is actually a brake lever from a snowmobile. We'll get started on that. What I actually did is took the old brake lever here and I flipped it over because it's got a big notch on this side. So this is the brake mount for, this is off a 2003 Firecat, and we'll just get that on there. Okay, so now that that's mounted, you can kind of see the difference between the two. The way they mount, it actually pulls in this way where this pulls in the other way. So this is designed to go on this side over here. We're going to try to get this out, and we'll reuse the brake line and see if that runs up here. If not, I actually have some other brake line that we can bend and put in there. So I got the brakes all mounted, I got the chain tensioner on. Unfortunately, this master cylinder I got, it's got a little crack right here, so when I squeeze the brakes, it actually leaks fluid out here instead of stopping it. I just put the footwells on real quick, but I think it's to the point where we can, we got a little snow left in the backyard. We can take it out and give it a little test drive in the backyard. I won't have brakes, unfortunately, but hopefully everything goes good. Thanks for watching this episode of RecNation. We finally got the track sled out for a test drive. It's geared a little low. I'm gonna have to change the sprockets on this so we can get a little more speed out of it. It was only like probably 15 miles an hour in top speed when I was trying it out, or top gear when I tried it out. So we can do that. And then the footwells, I just kind of mounted on it temporarily. Those will have to be beefed up. It works how I thought it would work. I'm able to push with my feet, kind of pick the front end up, and that lets it turn. So overall, not too bad. At least it's running and driving. So hopefully you like this episode of RecNation. Join us again for another episode. Have a good day.